Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I've got a full review to do for you on the Kizer Feist. I skipped the first impressions on this one for two reasons. A, I was kind of busy, and by the time I was ready, it's kind of too late to call it a first impressions. But B, I've also owned this exact knife before, and the last time I had it for a couple of months. I carried it a fair bit, and I got a pretty good sense of what this knife was all about. So getting this knife again, right off the bat, I didn't think it would be very genuine to do a first impressions, since I've already had a pretty full series of experiences with this knife the last time that I owned and carried one. The reason why I sold it the first time, frankly, was the reason why I sell a lot of knives that I sell. I liked it, I enjoyed it, I had fun with it when it was the knife that was in my pocket. It's fun to fidget with. There's a lot of good things about it, but oftentimes when I'm chasing something new, or when I'm just trying to freshen up my collection and try new things, sometimes I look through and I see what gets carried the least often over a recent span of time, and I decide, you know what, I'd be fine with it if those knives weren't in my collection anymore and I replaced them with stuff that's new and therefore more exciting. That's just the way I collect knives. Whether you relate to that or not, so be it. But I was excited to get another one of these for a couple of reasons. A, it's a knife that I kind of missed, which sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't. There's a few knives that I've let go of that I've kind of regret letting go of, where it's been like, man, that was kind of a unicorn, it would be hard to get another one, and I miss it. And other knives I don't miss at all. Other knives, it's like, cool, glad I got to experience it. If I never held another one, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. This one was kind of in the middle. It's not like something that I constantly was like, oh, I can't wait until I get another Feist. But the second that I got one offered to me on trade, it was like, no-brainer. I'd be happy to have another one. I have missed it enough where I thought it would be fun to have another one, and I didn't have any real, like, solid front flippers in my collection at the time that I traded for this. In fact, even right now, I think it's pretty much the only front flipper I have. I might have another knife or two that can be front flipped, but aren't like designed as front flippers. Like, I can front flip my Shaman, but that's not a front flipper. This is a designated front flipper. That's what this knife does. So I'm glad that I've had it around again, and I've been carrying it quite a bit since it got into my collection again. I traded for this from my buddy Jonathan from Redeemed Creations Co., who's become a good buddy at this point, so it also feels fun to do knife deals with friends. He got my Yojimbo 2, which he had been wanting one for a while, and it's just, that's a knife that I'd had a long time and felt kind of connected to, so it's fun for that to go to a friend. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about this knife. I'm sure some of you who hate my rambling are furious right now. Joke's on you, because you're still watching for some reason and probably commenting, stop rambling. Anyways, the Feist is a Justin Lundquist design. I hope I'm saying his name right. I know Justin I said right. I don't know if it's Lundquist or Lundquist. Yeah, there's a D in there, but do I say the D? Justin Lundquist. Let's go with that. It's a Justin Lundquist design. This one is specifically the, I think they call it the Warney. I'd call it kind of a reverse Tanto. I guess both are kind of right, but there's a couple of different blade shapes. I know there's at least this, and the first one that came out is more of, I think, just like a basic drop point. The last one I had was literally this exact spec. So this is the only version of this knife I have ever owned. I know they've done a few with different handle materials. So they've done some in carbon fiber. I think I've seen some in micarta. I'm not sure if they've played with like coatings on the blades or different finishes or anything like that, but I really like this variant of the knife. As a little titanium frame lock, I think it gives it the right feel for me, for what I want out of a small little secondary carry, front flipper, fidgety, fun knife. Titanium handle skills, titanium pocket clip. As you can see, the clip looks pretty good. It's very functional. It's not hot spotty or sharp anywhere. It's got good retention. It's not deep carry, but it's a nice little knife. It kind of tucks into a pocket fairly well regardless of that. It does have a stainless steel lock bar insert, as you can see by the screws that are outside of there. And then we've got a nice little titanium backspacer. On the show scale, we've got some speed holes drilled in, which I think looks pretty stylish. I don't hate or love those. I feel like I would slightly prefer to have them there compared to just a plain scale. It adds a little bit of kind of texture and depth to the knife, and I assume, I mean, inherently it has to alleviate some of the weight, but I doubt there's like a ton of weight savings by drilling those few holes in there. So overall, it's a fairly lightweight just because it's so tiny, and it's a pretty robust design, being a frame lock with an insert. We've got S35 VN blade steel, which I know I dump on a lot of the time because I love making Chris Reeve fanboys mad, but S35 VN is a good steel. I like S35 VN. I'm happy to use it. It's not my favorite steel in the world. There are steels that are better. Yes, I said better, but I like S35 VN. And on a little secondary kind of backup EDC knife like this, it's a great steel. There's a really nice crown spine on this knife. One of the better crown spines that I can recall feeling. It's just very, come on, focus here. It's very smooth. It's a nice place to put your thumb for push cuts. It functions very well for me, and it feels way more refined than if this was just like a typical cornered spine. There's jimping right up here, and then right down here. The jimping that ends up back here when it's open is to front flip the knife. You've kind of got to have that there. Let me see. So that your finger gets some grip and you can indeed front flip it. The jimping down here, I think, is a case where I'll actually call it necessary too, because there's no guard on the top or bottom of this knife, and so giving you a little bit of an index point where it's not even aggressive jimping at all. It's not painful no matter how hard I press down onto it. It's not sharp or aggressive, but it gives me a spot where I know where my finger is, and I know once I get to that jimping, I shouldn't keep putting my finger further forward because then it'll be on the edge. So I like that there's that little bit of jimping there just as like an index point to know where my finger is. And I find that in a saber grip, how I typically hold a knife for regular tasks, regular EDC use, this knife is very comfortable. I can extend my finger really far forward onto that crown spine and it stays comfortable. I get a good amount of control over it. And then in a hammer grip, very comfortable. This handle is so neutral, kind of almost Puko style as I would describe it, that it's just, I mean, it can't be uncomfortable. I get a full 4 fingers on it, just barely, with my size hands. I wear a medium glove typically. I get just barely all 4 fingers on there, but even if my hands were a little bigger, and I imagine my pinky kind of coming off of there, it's still not going to be uncomfortable. It's just so perfectly neutral, and it's a good thickness that it fills out the hand enough. It doesn't feel unsubstantial or like I shouldn't be confident in it. It's just, for the size, I feel like it's a really well-constructed handle. Plus, all of the edges on this knife are so smooth. It feels reminiscent of the crown spine. Like, everything is just very rounded and softened, and it makes it so comfortable in hand and to use. And to me, a knife this size and this type isn't a hard use knife. But for pretty much any EDC task that comes up, I've found that this knife actually does quite well. The edge that came on it is nice. It's not the greatest edge I've ever felt in my life. It's not super thin behind the edge, but it's acceptably thin. I mean, it's just balanced and it's very functional. If this knife was like reground to be laser thin behind the edge, then yeah, I'd probably like it a little bit more to do a lot more cutting with. But for the types of things that I'll reach into my back pocket and pull out a little front flipper to do, this is super functional. This knife, it kind of blurs the line between like fun fidget toy, just cool thing to carry around, and actual like functional tool. And so I like that all of the things that make this knife feel really good in hand naturally make it a better performer. Because a knife that's comfortable in hand, that feels great to hold on to, is going to be a knife that inherently is more pleasant to do a lot of cutting tasks with. And so, I mean, I've cut quite a bit of cardboard. Just did a cut on here in my last video, but it's like, it goes through. This is nice double wall cardboard. It goes through fine. It's not the sliciest knife I've ever used, but for opening boxes, opening mail, cutting zip ties, the types of things that my secondary EDC knives do, this one functions great. I like as well just the way that the action is tuned. This is a pretty small, light blade, and it's not like a stupid expensive South African front flipper that's really well made. These are, I don't know, they're under 150 bucks. They might be closer to the 100 mark since I traded for it. I don't know, and I don't remember what they cost, but it's not like a budget knife, but it's not expensive either. And so to get a nice tuned action on bearings, which for the front flipper, the detent is dialed great for. I don't find myself failing on this knife. I'm not like the world's best front flipper user. I'm not bad at it either, but that I don't fail on it, that it deploys reliably every time. It's pretty intuitive to use. The placement of the front flipper comes high enough that I get a good amount of leverage all the way up here to go ahead and actuate it. I like that. Sometimes I find on front flippers, I've noticed the makers or the designers will put the tab all the way up to like here. Like it sticks super tall and proud, so you're like flipping it from all the way up way above the pivot. This one's a really good placement so that the knife still looks kind of minimalist, and even closed, the whole thing looks very small and slim and trim. There's not a big tab sticking up here. It's just, I don't know, I really like this knife. It might be my favorite current Kizer offering. I haven't tried them all. I've only tried a few. But of the knives that Kizer makes, I find I am often not very interested in them, if I'm being totally honest. This one is one that was interesting enough and likable enough that now I'm on my second one, and I'm enjoying it again. I don't know that I'll have this knife forever, but it's not one I'm trying to like flip immediately and ditch. I'm glad I have this, and I enjoy carrying and using it. It's just really well balanced for being a secondary. And I'm somebody who carries a secondary knife almost every day. I'm not going to say every day, because every now and then I'll go somewhere where I'm trying to be like really lightweight and I've just got a knife on me, but 95% of the time I have a primary and a secondary knife, and so I like having secondaries around that are either ultra functional or ultra fun, and I can kind of play off of that with what I carry as my primary. And this one's kind of, it's like right in the middle of both. It's a lot of fun to play with. It's one of the more fun knives to fidget with for me, just because it's a different type of action. If you had a sea of front flippers in front of you, this one might not be the most fun one. I'm not super experienced with front flippers, but because it's a front flipper and it functions well as one, it makes it something I reach for more often because I just don't have a lot of them. And then for on top of that, for it to be so nice in hand, so comfortable, and so functional for me, for what I expect it to be able to do, it's just kind of a no-brainer in my book. So this is a Kizer that's done really, really well. I like it quite a bit. I've had no issues with either one that I've owned across all of the carry and use that I've put through both of them, and I'm impressed. So I guess that'll kind of be it. This one is the Kizer Justin Lundquist designed Feist, and like I said, this one is I think they call it the Warney. I think it's the Feist W for Warncliffe, but this blade shape is what it is, and I really like it. I think it's a fun knife. I think if you haven't had a front flipper and you're front flipper curious, and this is something that lands kind of within your budget, and you don't necessarily want to spend like chamois money, this is one I definitely recommend. This is, I don't know, I'm not super drawn to front flippers in general. I don't like them enough that I feel like I want to get like a really expensive South African custom, but I like them enough that I like having this around, and this feels totally worth it to me. So anyway, thanks for checking it out with me. I appreciate it as always, and there will be plenty more knife reviews to come, but that should be it on the Kizer Feist.